Welcome to our on-demand answering questions series, digital series. We went through the month of August and September of 2022, answering questions you all submitted about God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, the Bible, our culture, and how do we just live as people following Jesus with these questions. And we answered them in August and September, and we knew we didn't answer all the questions, and we promised that we would try to answer the rest of them through online videos like this one. And so if you were looking for this, I'm glad you found it. This is the beginning of a series we're going to be rolling out of finishing the questions you all asked. So I just want to dive in. I want to spend the next few minutes with Adam talking about a question you all submitted. The question was, how does our church, the Christian Church of Carl Junction, and also our sister site, Christian Church in North Heights, and our online community, how do we, as one church in multiple locations, handle this concept of church discipline as directed in Matthew chapter 18? So let's dive into that. Adam, how do we practice church discipline around here?
Well, this is a really important question to deal with because we live in a world that is full of brokenness, and brokenness just makes more brokenness. Mm-hmm. And one of the inevitable fruit of brokenness is bitterness.
Yeah.
We fight. Everybody wants to fight about something somewhere all the time. It wants to happen. Our world loves to wallow in bitterness and in grudges and irritation and frustration. We have to hold on to all those things. And if we don't practice discipline the right way, then we find ourselves just imitating the world that we live in. But Jesus said we were sent into the world to bring his kingdom to bear on the world so the world could be different, better, transformed. If that's going to happen, we have to deal with discipline and sin the way Jesus says to.
Yes.
He says in Matthew 18, Jesus speaks, this is 18 verse 15, Jesus' words. He says, if your brother or sister sins, and now for the sake of the conversation and the sake of the passage here, brother or sister is not referring to your biological siblings. I have one sister, right? And this is not what it's talking about. Mm-hmm. In this context, Keenan, you are my brother here. People in church with you, they are your sisters and your brothers. That's who it's talking about.
The spiritual community that you belong to.
It's the family around us, right? Yeah. If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. So many things in here that we've got to do in just the right order, in just the right way. So we do it Jesus' way, not the world's way. Mm-hmm. If your brother or sister sins against you, go and point out their fault. Just between the two of you. Just between the two of you. Now, I know our culture likes to point out the fault of other people in public.
Yeah. On
social media, in groups, in text messages. We like to point it out in public. That's not what Jesus says to do. He's just pointing out in private. Yeah. Why in private?
Because, it's all about restoration. Whether it's a marriage or whether you're in a relationship with friends or like a community is based off communication, right? And when we're sinning, we're causing harm to each other. Mm-hmm. When I choose to sin, when Adam chooses to sin, because we're all sinful people, we all have flaws. But when we choose to do this and we hurt somebody, then it's not, the best practice is not to go around saying, they hurt me. The best practice is to talk to that person, communication, for a chance for restoration and healing to happen, because the sin caused division between the two of you.
Yeah.
And that's what Jesus is talking about here. Is like, don't spread the sickness. Stay with the two of you and see if you can resolve it and heal it. But just like sin, sometimes we don't like to listen, right? I don't like to have sin pointed out in my life, so sometimes like, nah, and I move on. And then Jesus gives us examples of what to do in case restoration does not happen.
Yeah. He says, if they don't listen, you go to step 2. By the way, if I can pause for 1 second and back up a little bit, it's important to note also this is sin in the church. Mm-hmm. This is not a mandate from Jesus to go to Walmart and walk around saying sin. That does not help anybody.
No.
We need to accept people, love people where they are, and then show them a Jesus that transforms them.
Yes.
Right? This is sin in the church, between believers. Okay? If that doesn't work, if they don't listen to you, Jesus says, then take 1 or 2 others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. So, for example, if Keenan, as a brother in the church, were to do something that was sin against me, to hurt me or to negatively impact me in some way, then rather than choosing to go be bitter, be upset, be frustrated, or to gossip or to slander him in public, Instead of running to Facebook, I come to him one-on-one.
Yeah.
If he doesn't listen, then I will go and get a couple of witnesses that might have seen or witnessed what happened, or be a witness to our friendship, to our relationship, and we come back together to surround him with grace. Because we had the conversation one-on-one, or in this group, we want to have a conversation that's full of love, that's full of grace, but also full of truth. We want to speak true words, but season those and weigh those along with love and grace. We have to do that. So we surround him with grace. Now, it says here, in Jesus' words, if they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church. And if they refuse to listen even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. This is a culture Jesus is talking to now that had tax collectors. They were Jewish people, the same culture as them, but they'd betrayed their countrymen, their people, and they were treated as cast outs or exiles. They weren't befriended at all. Is Jesus saying here that if we go one-on-one, then bring a group and there's no listening, there's no restoration? Is Jesus telling us to kick them out of the church?
Here's the answer, and this is a really hard answer, but yes. Bottom line, yes. And here's the reason why. If you're watching like that seems harsh, here's the reason. Sin destroys everything it touches. And when someone chooses to sin and it hurts someone else, because sin always hurts people, and that person is living in sin, and this person comes and says, hey, your sin is hurting not only yourself, but your family and me, and they say, I don't care. And so then they go and I get you and I get this other person, we come in because we love this person, say, you're living in sin, you're hurting people, you're hurting us, you got to stop. And they say, I don't care. Then they're choosing to say, I don't want to belong to this family anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so God, because he protects his family, he protects his children, says if they want to choose to live in sin instead of obedience to Jesus, then you let them go. You cast them out, because we have to protect the people from sin. Not because we're perfect, not because we have it all together, but because sin is destructive.
Yeah. And the good news in this, because that is a harsh reality at the end. The good news is that if we faithfully walk out step one, going one-on-one, step two, bringing a group together to surround with grace and truth and love, and to pray for that person and that relationship together, if we do step one and step two faithfully, then 99 out of 100 times, it resolves. Mm-hmm. It resolves. I've been around the church my entire life. I've been leading in ministry and serving as a pastor for a long time now, a couple of decades or more. And I can tell you, it almost always works itself out if we faithfully go. The problem is when we as believers chicken out. We don't want to deal with hard things, and so we let it fester, then it goes bad every time. But if we go faithfully through step one and step two, it works itself out. Yeah. Now there is a difference here. There's a difference too. We have to make this line. There's a difference between sin and a violation of my preference. Right? Mm-hmm. What's that look like?
So like an example I'm just gonna give would be like if I chose to go into your yard and I saw your dog there. Adam doesn't have a dog anymore, so this is a good example. If I saw your dog there though, and I was like, man, I don't like your dog, and I shot your dog, that causes harm between us, right? I just murdered something, and you came to me, you're like, dude, that hurt me, and you can't do that. Again, this is a crazy example, but just to kind of illustrate the point. You would come to me and say, you can't do that. That hurt us, that hurt a relationship, and that's sin. You murdered something. And I say, nah, it's not sin, and I move off. That's the point you'd start bringing other people. Versus, I go into his yard, and I say, I don't like the bush you planted. I think it's a silly bush. And he goes around telling people, Keenan's saying he doesn't like my bush. He's hurting my feelings. Well, that's a preference, right? Mm-hmm. Both of us are being silly in our preferences. I'm being silly by nitpicking something that doesn't really matter. Yeah. And you are also, this is sad, but it's true, where you're allowing it to hurt you. Yeah. And we have to talk about things. So preferences, we also need to talk about, because again, restoration and communication within a relationship is important. Mm-hmm. But we have to recognize the difference between a sin that God calls and defines sin versus preferences to what we like.
Yeah. All too often, way too many churches have been damaged, hurt, and broken because of preference. Mm-hmm. Because preference. Hear me out. The types of music you sing at your church, the kinds of songs, the order of service, the length of service, whether there's a greeting time or not, whether there's a Sunday school class you like or not, whether the greeters were smiley or not. All those things are preference. None of that's sin. But those are the things we tend to fight about in church. I want to encourage you here as we wrap this video up, this time up. I want to encourage you to live the way the kingdom of God lives, through the lens of Jesus, viewing sin as sin, preference as things that we can just let go of. I don't have to get my way on everything. I can sing songs that I don't prefer. It's okay. I can do this, whatever, that I don't prefer. That's okay. Let those things go. Live in healthy relationship. Hold people lovingly accountable. And let's continue to move forward as the kingdom of God.
Absolutely. If you have more questions about this, or maybe this answered your question, that's awesome. If you have more questions on church discipline and what that looks like, shoot us a message. Email us. We would love to continue to walk alongside you. We understand that in these videos, we may not answer all the things that you have questions about, but we hope that these videos continue to help you ask more and deeper questions as you pursue the heart of God and pursue his mission in the world, so that way you look more like Jesus in all that you say and all that you do, so that he can be glorified through your life. Church, until we see each other again, you are sent.